The drama surrounding David Benavidez and Caleb Plant didn't begin when the first bell rang inside the MGM Grand Garden Arena. It didn't start at the press conference or even at the weigh-in. It started the moment Caleb Plant looked David Benavidez in the eye and decided that the man they called the Mexican Monster was someone he could disrespect without consequence. That decision, bold and reckless in equal measure, set in motion one of the most emotionally charged grudge matches super middleweight boxing had seen in years. And by the time the final bell echoed through Las Vegas on March 25, 2023, Plant had received a brutal, unforgettable education in exactly what happens when you poke the wrong man. To understand the magnitude of what unfolded that night, you have to go back and trace the roots of this rivalry, because this was never manufactured beef cooked up by promoters looking to sell pay-per-view buys. This had real heat behind it, the kind that doesn't need press releases or social media campaigns because the emotion is already doing all the work on its own. Benavidez had been quietly building his case as one of the most feared men in the 168-pound division, stringing together 6 consecutive stoppage victories that had turned him from a rising contender into a genuine boogeyman of the super middleweight class. He was relentless, physically imposing, technically refined, and most critically, he hit like a wrecking ball with either hand. Yet despite all of that, the sport's biggest stage kept finding ways to look past him. The dream fight with Canelo Alvarez, the fight that would have confirmed his place among the elite, continued to remain frustratingly out of reach. So Benavidez did what hungry fighters do when the mountain won't come to them. He went and found his own mountain to climb, and he found it in the form of Caleb Sweet Hands Plant, the former IBF super middleweight world champion who had already shared the ring with Canelo and carried himself with the kind of polished confidence that can either be admired or deeply despised depending on which side of the fence you stand on. The beef between these two crystallized into something truly explosive the day Plant slapped Benavidez's brother, José Benavidez Jr., in what appeared to be a split-second act of disrespect during one of their heated exchanges in the build-up. It might have looked like a minor incident to the casual observer, but in the world of boxing, where family and honor mean everything, that slap was gasoline poured directly onto a fire that had already been burning beneath the surface. From that moment forward, there was no diplomatic exit. There was no cooling off period, no apology that would have been accepted, and no manufactured peace. This fight was going to happen, and it was going to be ugly. David Benavidez wasn't just fighting for a title anymore. He was fighting for his family, his name, and the satisfaction of making Plant answer for every act of disrespect with his fists in front of the entire world. When fight night arrived, Caleb Plant walked to the ring with something that surprised a lot of observers: genuine confidence. Not the manufactured swagger of a man trying to convince himself, but real, earned confidence, built on a clear and carefully crafted game plan. Plant and his trainer, Stephen Breadman Edwards, had studied Benavidez's patterns, identified his tendencies, and constructed a blueprint designed to frustrate and outmaneuver the pressure-heavy style that had run roughshod over everyone else the Mexican Monster had faced. Plant was going to use the ring, work his jab, tie up after exchanges, and avoid the kind of sustained firefights where Benavidez's power and relentless forward march could become truly overwhelming. It was a smart game plan on paper, disciplined, tactical, and grounded in the reality that you cannot simply stand in front of David Benavidez and expect to walk away unscathed. The opening rounds played out almost exactly as the Plant camp had drawn them up. Caleb stood his ground in the pocket more than expected, flicking out that sharp jab and catching Benavidez as he moved forward, timing his exits, clinching strategically after exchanges to break rhythm and slow the pace. It was measured, intelligent boxing that reflected the kind of high-level thinking that had made Plant a world champion in the first place. Benavidez, meanwhile, was uncharacteristically quiet through those early stances. His own jab, normally a punishing and consistent weapon that flows naturally into everything else he throws, was largely dormant in those first few rounds. He was throwing well below his averages, and the emotion of the moment, all that pent-up anger and personal fury, seemed to be actually working against him, causing him to tighten up at precisely the moments where he needed to be most fluid. You could see it in the way he moved. The desire to land something massive was so overwhelming that it was interfering with his natural process. But Benavidez is not simply a one-dimensional pressure fighter, and anyone who had watched his career closely enough understood that patience was always part of his arsenal. He began to read Plant's rhythm as the rounds progressed, picking up on the patterns, timing the exits, and slowly, methodically beginning to close off the escape routes that Plant had been using so effectively. By the third round, the first real signs of his physical superiority were beginning to emerge as he dug a heavy left hook into Plant's body and finished the round with noticeably more authority. The crowd inside the MGM Grand could feel the shift beginning, even if it was still subtle, even if Plant was still competitive and sharp enough to make the rounds genuinely close. The fuse had been lit. Everyone in that arena knew it was only a matter of time. The middle rounds became a fascinating chess match between a boxer trying desperately to stay disciplined and a predator slowly tightening the noose. Plant continued to find moments of success, backing Benavidez towards the ropes briefly in the fifth, catching him with crisp combinations in the fourth that forced him momentarily off his rhythm. But with each passing round, the spaces were shrinking. Benavidez's jab, when he finally committed to it, began cutting through Plant's defenses and setting up the bigger shots behind it. He was slipping punches more consistently, timing Plant's forward movement, and making his body attacks increasingly punishing. Every heavy left hook to the ribs was an investment, a withdrawal from a bank account of stamina and resilience that no fighter has unlimited access to. Plant's corner worked hard between rounds, keeping him mentally sharp, reminding him of the game plan, urging him to stay calm and continue executing. And to his enormous credit, Plant was listening. He was fighting a smart, brave fight. He just happened to be in there with someone who was slowly but surely becoming impossible to contain. The seventh round was the moment the entire complexion of the fight changed. Benavidez landed a crushing left hook that visibly hurt Plant, snapping his head sideways and sending a shockwave through the arena. Plant, to his credit, responded with a sharp counter of his own. Sweet hands indeed, but the damage was done. You could see it in his movement afterwards, in the slightly less crisp execution of his footwork, in the way he was now having to work considerably harder just to get through each round in one piece. Benavidez sensed the shift immediately, the way great fighters always do, and began to pour more into his attacks, forcing Plant to hold more frequently and desperately. The clinching that had been strategic now becoming genuinely necessary for survival. Then came the eighth, and it was devastating. A short, compact right hand buckled Plant's legs in a way that sent the crowd to its feet, and Benavidez descended on him like a man who had been waiting all night for exactly this moment. The barrage that followed was relentless and precise, a combination of uppercuts, hooks, and straight shots that had Plant holding on for dear life, so battered that the ringside doctor was called over to examine a cut that had opened above Plant's eye. It was a brutal sequence that underscored everything Benavidez's supporters had always said about him, that given enough time, he will find you, he will hurt you, and once he does, there is no escaping the storm that follows. What happened over the next several rounds was a testament to two things simultaneously: the extraordinary toughness and sheer willpower of Caleb Plant, and the methodical, almost surgical, controlled violence of David Benavidez, operating at something close to his terrifying ceiling. Plant was bleeding. Plant was exhausted. Plant was taking punishment that would have stopped most fighters several rounds earlier. And yet he kept moving, kept throwing, kept finding ways to disrupt the rhythm just enough to survive.